This is Mr. Coates, and this is APES lecture number 42 on air pollution and health. I want to draw your attention over here to this graph. And what this graph is showing is that as we get from more of the developing countries to the developed countries, we see that air pollution, this black line here, total disease produced by air pollution, is dropping. So that means these countries over here, these developing countries, have the highest disease from air pollution. Now let's look at a couple of these countries on their own. For example, India. Most of the disease is due to indoor air pollution, and this is mostly due to the fact that they have poor quality of air circulation in their buildings, and there's a lot of cooking that still happens indoors with wood and coal and other biofuels. So this is the biggest part of the problem in India. If we move over and go over to China here, now China has some other problems going on. They do have a very high incidence of indoor air pollution, but their outdoor air pollution disease issue is much greater. And this is because of their reliance on coal for electric production. So first of all, let's look at how our body protects us from air pollutants. So we look at this slide over here. This slide is basically a electron micrograph, or it's taken by an electron microscope, of the outside of a lung cell. And what you see are all these little hairs here. These little hairs are called cilia. And these cilia coat the outside of your lung cells. And these cilia actually help move particulates out of your lungs. And they move particulates so they can be attracted into mucus, and then you can cough and sneeze that out of your lungs. And so this is one way your lungs helps protect you from air pollutants, particularly those small particles. Now what happens is that after a while these pollutants start breaking down the cilia, and the cilia don't function as well as they used to, and also the linings of your lungs start to break down. And prolonged exposure basically keeps the cilia from keeping out and removing those pollutants. So after a while you start getting problems with asthma and bronchitis, could lead to lung cancer and emphysema. And it just depends on the degree of exposure and what pollutants you've been exposed to. Now the World Health Organization also keeps very good tabs on air pollution deaths and air pollution health related issues. And they have declared that indoor air pollution, especially in developing countries, is the #1 serious health problem when it comes to air pollution. Once again, we have really done a good job cleaning up outdoor air pollution. However, the indoor air pollution is still a very serious problem. 93% of the pollution deaths from indoor air quality usually resulting from burning of coal or wood in those developing nations. The World Health Organization is working very hard to switch developing countries getting away from using wood and coal indoors and doing that kind of cooking outside, or changing to different fuels like possibly natural gas or even solar. And so the World Health Organization is actually supplying some of these developing countries with lots of solar ovens to get that cooking out of the buildings and reduce that indoor air quality issue. Now in the United States, I mentioned that our outdoor air is very good, and this is because in the 1970s the Clean Air Act came about. Now the Clean Air Act has had several major revisions since then. The latest was back in 1990. But one of the most important things the Clean Air Act did is it set up these National Ambient Air Quality Standards, also known as NAAQS. And it set those for 6 major outdoor air pollutants. Those pollutants include SO2, lead, mercury, and some of the other ones like NOx. However, it did not include CO2. Now, the standards specify the maximum allowable level that can be released from industries and from cars. And this makes major industries monitor the amount of pollutants they're putting out and get permits for anything they're putting out above the standards. Now, these have been very, very successful in the United States. The National Ambient Air Quality Standards have reduced major pollutants like lead and carbon monoxide and VOCs and particulates and sulfur dioxide by over 30% for most of them. We're working on NOx as well. NOx is a little bit harder to remove, but all these other things have been removed in huge quantities from the air outside in the United States. And this is all because of the Clean Air Act. The Clean Air Act is overseen by the Environmental Protection Agency, Unfortunately, over the last few years, the EPA has been degraded in its ability to do things due to budget cuts and also administrations that haven't been very friendly towards the EPA. And hopefully in the future, the EPA will become more important. And I hope that the Clean Air Act regulations will stay in place. They have really done a good job with cleaning up air quality. Even that is the case, there are some other things that can happen with the Clean Air Act. So there are some things that can be shifted to clean up. Right now, most of the shift in air pollution is controlling what's released. If we could shift our focus to getting to prevention rather than cleanup, that would really save us a lot of money in the long run. Also, we need to increase mile per gallon standards for larger vehicles. SUVs, diesel trucks, things like this have no mile per gallon standards like most cars do. And if we can get those SUVs and trucks under those CAFE standards, that would really help out as well. Another issue is these lawnmowers. Lawnmowers, chainsaws, weed whackers, anything with a two-cycle engine, these also have no pollution control on them whatsoever, and they create a lot of outdoor air pollution by themselves. If you've ever done one of these, most of the time what you have to do, you actually have to mix oil into the gasoline in order to lubricate the engine. And when you do that, you actually burn some of that oil, and this is when you get a big blue cloud when you first start one of these things up. And so if we can get these cleaned up and get them underneath the same regulations, then that would also reduce our air pollution quite a lot. Regulate ocean-going ships. The problem with ocean-going ships is a lot of these ships aren't registered in the United States. Therefore, they do not have to abide by our regulations, and there are no international laws about maintaining ships to the point where they don't release a lot of air pollution. And a lot of these ships, when they come into port, you can see these big black clouds of smoke coming out of their smokestacks from all the oils and fuels that they burn. And getting a worldwide and international agreement on the amount of these type of pollutants put out by these would really benefit that. Unfortunately, the Clean Air Act does not take care of boats, even in the United States. We could also regulate greenhouse gases, especially CO2. Once again, I said that the Clean Air Act does not regulate CO2 at this point. And with the increasing use of fossil fuels and burning of forests, the increasing amount of CO2 in the atmosphere, we really need to have a national standard on CO2, and unfortunately we just don't have one right now. There are some international treaties out there that govern CO2 now. However, there is no federal standard in the United States for CO2. The last thing is better enforcement. There's just not enough money, there's just not enough time, not enough personnel in the federal government to monitor everything that's going out there in the world. And so enforcement becomes a big problem. People know they're polluting, but they can get away with it because there's just not enough enforcement out there. Fortunately, the biggest polluters are shut down, but the small ones, they kind of get away with it, and that's unfortunate. Now I want to go over a case study with you here on indoor air pollution and health. One of the big indoor air pollutants that you can find still around is asbestos. Asbestos was a mineral that was used back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s as an insulator. And they used to insulate boilers and pipes and anything that got hot or could get hot, they would insulate with asbestos. Also, it's a very good fire retardant, so they would use it in ceiling tiles, they would use it in flooring tiles, they would use it sometimes in wall insulation, and so asbestos was highly used during this time. The problem with this mineral is that when it starts to break apart, it creates these microscopic fibers that can float around in the atmosphere, and these fibers then can be breathed in. And it's been shown that these fibers cause lung cancer. In fact, they are a very high lung cancer causing agent, very high carcinogen. And this is a big problem right now with people redoing older homes. My wife watches all these shows on how they're redoing homes, and I would say at least one episode a week deals with somebody having to deal with asbestos in this old house. And they have to actually go in and seal or remove all this asbestos out of their house, and there has to be a special company that does it. They seal up the whole house so no particles get out into the rest of the house. They have to put in all these air cleaners to remove all these fibers that are suspended, and it's a huge burden and a huge cost to anyone who buys a house or a building that has asbestos in it. Well, I hope you learned something about indoor air quality and the Clean Air Act. Make sure you know all those things about the Clean Air Act. The Clean Air Act is a very important act, and I cannot stress how important that act has been to cleaning up the air quality here in the United States.